What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you. So, John has actually got a stomach bug or something, so I'm just going to take over for a little bit. I haven't done a solo review in fucking forever, but there are some more releases I wanted to cover for the week of the 30th of September because, well, a lot of shit was released. So the main one that I wanted to cover was the newest offering from Tankard, Pavlov's Dawgs. This comes out on, again, the 30th of September on Reaper Entertainment. This band formed in 1983 in Germany. This is their 18th full length. I have like 4 of them, and well, I mean, all right, Tankard is part of the Teutonic 4, or in certain circles, the Teutonic 3, because they kind of exclude Tankard and a lot of those circles. I think they belong in there. They kind of lighten up the nature of the rest of the bands in there, Sodom, Creator, and Destruction. And that is namely because they have, well, at least one universal theme across the board. Granted, they do talk about other stuff on their albums, but there is almost a universal constant on all Tankard albums, and that is beer. Tankard and beer go together like Amon Amarth and Vikings, or Five Finger Death Punch and spousal abuse. If you drank as much beer as Tankard talked about, you would either be dead or probably in an AA meeting right now. Now again, they do talk about other stuff, but you know, beer, kind of the main thing. So I was kind of curious about this one. I've been a fan of the band for a while. I kind of like their lighthearted nature, and you know, they know how to write some, you know, solid thrash metal. Now this one, I was a little bit hesitant about when I initially saw how long it was. This album is almost an hour long, and I think for Tankard, that might be a bit long. Now granted, you get tons of thrash metal riffs, you know, big galloping drums. The production on here done by Martin Buckwalter is really solid. He actually did the production on the last Destruction album, Diabolical, which is fucking fantastic. Everything sounds crisp, the guitars are nice and out in front, the drums sound nice and punchy, but I do take issue maybe with the vocals. I think they are a little bit over-processed. It seems like they're constantly doubled and, you know, looking for harmonies that aren't necessarily there. And that's mainly because their frontman, Gary? It's Gerre. I don't know how to say it, but he's like the OG frontman for this band. His voice only kind of carries slightly, like a little bit of a tune when he's belting out his thrash lyrics. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't necessarily generate the biggest hook, and that is kind of an issue on here where they kind of try to go for bigger hooks, namely on more long, thought-out songs. And by thought out, I mean they kind of just repeat a lot of stuff and kind of lengthen them out. That was kind of a main issue going in this is, man, this could have benefited from some editing. Songs like Metal Cash Machine and On the Day I Die are like 6.5 to almost 7 minutes long, and I kind of feel like they don't necessarily take you on the adventure you would expect from a song that long from a thrash band. It's kind of just a lot of repeated parts. Granted, the riffs on them are pretty solid, but they kind of drag a little bit and they just feel needlessly long. Like if you just chopped up a bit and maybe didn't repeat the chorus like 4 times at the end, you know, that would kind of sum it up a little bit, make it a little bit more of an interesting song. Where I think this band is at its strongest are on songs that are like a little bit faster, a little bit more energetic, namely Diary of a Nihilist and Lockdown Forever. I think those are 2 standouts on here just because they feel more energetic and more bombastic. And lyrically, well, at least with Lockdown Forever, it's Tankard doing what Tankard does well when it comes down to talking about stuff that is outside of the realm of beer. That is taking a serious situation and sort of making light of it, you know, kind of doing an observational humor bit on something that is a little bit dark. And naturally Lockdown Forever is about the pandemic. And honestly, it sounds like how I spent the pandemic, like literally sitting in my place, listening to music nonstop. One of the main lines in the chorus is, got my record collection, metal music all night and day, and that is literally how I lived. The only difference is I got in front of a camera and talked about it incessantly. But the song is really good. It's high energy, it's got a great riff, it really just, you know, kind of stays in your face, it's nice and up-tempo. It's doing everything that I like about Tankard. And even in Diary of a Nihilist, it has that, again, kind of Slayerish vibe to it. It's a little bit more dark and sinister, and it kind of feels like they're making fun of like people that are like dark and edgy and say they worship Satan. I don't know, I didn't have the lyrics in front of me, and sometimes I can't understand every word that he says, but I don't know, the whole worshiping Satan thing is like, well, he's a nihilist. I don't think they believe in anything. Like, that's kind of the thing, like, we don't believe shit. I don't know, maybe they're making fun of that. Again, that's kind of the thing with this band, is like observational humor. But again, another high energy song that is packed with really good riffs and is really just kind of propelled by both humor and a little bit of like just angst. But then you got songs that are just kind of goofy, and they just kind of feel like directionless goofiness, you know, the kind of stuff they've talked about before, and they're just kind of doing a typical Tankard song, like Beerbarians and the title track. Beerbarians, it's just like a galloping chug and a song about them drinking beer or being beerbarians, whatever. I don't even think they drink anymore. I don't want to call them posers because, I mean, honestly, they're probably around now because they kind of quit drinking or at least slowed it the fuck down. But that song, and again, the title track, just feel kind of goofy, like juvenile for the sake of being juvenile. Like Pavlov's dog is literally about them frothing at the fucking mouth and drooling anytime someone opens a beer can. Or at least in this case, like a non-alcoholic brew. Whatever, I don't think that makes a different sound. But it's just kind of dumb. And, you know, I know, like, dumb lyrics have kind of always been Tankard's thing, and, you know, they're lighthearted, they're fun, but they've definitely done it better in the past. But there's also stuff that's more, like, topical matter, society, and, you know, just observations and such about how we live, like Xfluencer talking about Instagram models and nervous breakdowns and shit like that. Honestly, the song is really good. It's more of a mid-tempo, sort of just kind of lumbering pace, like kind of like a bolt thrower song, except more thrash oriented. It's pretty catchy, honestly, and despite the kind of goofy lyrics, it does manage to generate like a pretty cool hook. And then you have Veins of Terra, which you can actually hear how serious the song is just in the tone of it. Like it kind of switches to more of a dark, foreboding kind of dreary feel to start, and then kind of launches into like more kind of mellow deathish anthem music. Like I kind of like Amon Amarth, except, well, they're not talking about beer this time, but this definitely feels like a more dark and serious song. Like that doesn't have the goofy nature. There's not that sort of bounciness to the song. It's more kind of a straight ahead sort of bulldozer of a song with some pretty cool melodies in it. It definitely packs some of the heavier moments on here. Actually, in points, I would even say it's kind of comparable to a band like Warbringer. But unlike Warbringer, it is kind of missing that extra flash. And that's kind of a thing on the whole album where it's kind of just meat and potatoes, and this is the kind of meat and potatoes you might want to check the date on before actually sampling them, because they feel a little stale, a little expired, because this is kind of bare bones, but not in like a really good way. Like it has its energetic spots, it has its heavier spots, but a lot of it kind of feels flat. While the guitar work itself, like especially the rhythm guitars, are very riffy and chuggy, the leads kind of feel very bare bones. Like they just kind of pepper in a melody that just kind of fits whatever the bridge riff is, and it doesn't really do much. Like, you know, the melodies are nice, but there's like not a lot of flashy moments. There's nothing that screams, holy shit, that lead sticks out. A lot of the leads on here feel kind of interchangeable. And honestly, the vocals too are kind of flat. Like it's kind of a uniform delivery across the board. There's occasionally moments where you get like some spoken word stuff or kind of like a gang vocal behind him, but I think it's still him. I don't know, but the vocal performance on here, I mean, it's Tankard, but it's just with less energy, and with all that processing on the vocals, I feel like, I don't know, like maybe just the amount of energy in terms of the delivery itself just wasn't there, so they had to sort of spice it up a bit. Which sucks because there's a lot of songs on here that I think with a more ferocious vocal delivery, or at least like a more like passionate one or expressive or whatever adjective you want to use, something that makes it sound like there's just tons of energy fucking pouring out. I think with a little bit of that extra energy, the songs would have probably stood out just a little bit more. And I have to go back to the songwriting itself. Well, again, it's competent, you know, they're definitely good musicians. These songs are very long. I've always thought of this band as like a crossover band that just likes to write long songs or can't seem to sum it up in the standard 1.5 to 2 minutes of a crossover thrash song. A lot of these songs feel kind of padded out, like they just let measures go on too long or let a transition sort of ride out kind of oddly until it gets to the next moment that gets a little long. There's just too much of like just repeated measures. Like if they trim down some of the stuff and maybe again like cut off, you know, choruses a little bit sooner at the end, like don't necessarily need to repeat them so often, because honestly the choruses on here are kind of so-so. But songs like Memento, they just kind of feel needlessly long, and that one I believe is like a little bit over 5 minutes, but there's some really weird transitions and some, again, like attempts to sound more darker and, you know, like foreboding in the beginning, and it kind of just inevitably goes back to their main gear of, like, you know, thrash and D beats and such. There's some weird transitions in that song that just kind of make it wonky, but if you strip it down to like the strongest parts of that song, I think you'd have a solid like 3.5 minute song that would be pretty damn good. And then it even applies to the last track, On the Day I Die, which, you know, it's about the finality of your existence and such. There's some church bells, a very ominous intro. And while I'm sure it's genuine, it just doesn't feel genuine because, again, this album has an issue with tonality. The goofy to serious contrasts are jarring on here. It kind of makes this like very tonally uneven. Like, you want to be able to take them very serious on songs about, you know, fake news and, you know, misinformation being put out there and lying politicians, fascism, and just general societal stuff. But then you get a song about drooling like a dog for a beer when you hear the can open. The tonality thing just kind of bugs me. Like, I know they're very serious about social issues, but at the same time, I don't know, like they're dicking around, you know, and doing the usual Tankard thing, which was kind of the thing I usually sign up for with Tankard albums. So this is just kind of a mixed bag to listen to. And it's really difficult when it's kind of like from song to song. Like, you'll get a goofy one and then a serious one and then a goofy one. So, you know, it's kind of hard to get a hold of this album in terms of like what it is. Like, is it a ridiculous album like this album cover implies, or is it something that is like more reflective of society's issues, which this cover isn't? Tankard is always at their best when, again, they're either, well, I mean, inevitably talking about beer or kind of making light of societal issues. Like, that's where I think sort of they endear themselves to others. And on this, it's just sort of an odd listen. It kind of feels like they're trying to expand their sound, make their songs more grand, more long, when honestly all they need to do is just dial up that old school thrash energy and kind of have some fun with it. So overall, I'm gonna give this 2.5 stars. When they're dialed in, they sound great. Like, I like the fast, thrashy bangers on here. I think Lockdown Forever is an absolutely killer song. And there are some really good songs on here. It's just a lot of it needs to be trimmed down. And again, it's tonally so all over the place that it never really gels. I think the production on here is solid, but songs, they just need some more work on here. Like, I don't think this was a rushed effort because they had a lot of time to do this, but I think they needed more time to sort of whittle it down and get them to their absolute core, because again, this is meat and potatoes, but there's a lot of fat on that meat. And I think maybe the potatoes got left in the freezer or something like that. I don't think potatoes belong there. But maybe that's what happens when you get drunk and go grocery shopping for meat potatoes. I don't know. I haven't done that. If you're a longtime Tankard fan, I still think you'll probably enjoy this. If you're not a Tankard fan, I don't think this would win you over. I would still recommend checking out some of their earlier stuff. Like, I would say like first 3 or 4 albums are pretty damn solid. This is just, again, kind of okay, kind of let me down, but then again, I didn't have like tremendously high expectations for this. I just expected a Tankard album, and that was pretty much what I got, albeit a lot of extra stuff on here. I'd still say 100% check it out for yourself, form your own opinions. Don't just trust me. You could listen to this and this would be your favorite fucking Tankard album or favorite thrash album. I don't know. And neither will you until you actually check it out. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. There is a link to our Patreon there, which I need to get on there and talk more. I've been kind of lacking on that one. Sorry. But while you're at thrallsmetal.com, we do have shirts for sale. We do have an audio version of some of our episodes and our rankings on there, so you can listen to us without looking at us, which is probably beneficial because I wouldn't want to look at us. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, commenting, all that stuff. This is the awkward, thanky part of the video once again. And I never know exactly what to say. I always want to try to say something different, but it usually comes out the same dumb mess. But I'm going to say it anyway. You guys fucking rule. You guys keep us going. It is so much fun doing this, and it's just awesome. We've built this community here, and we want to keep it rolling. So yeah, plenty of stuff coming in the future. And with that, I will thank you one more time, because you've been good, and we will catch you later.